Welcome back, Deep End. Today, I want to start with an idea that is, it's pretty much baked into our modern DNA.
Okay.
It's the whole concept of the self-made man, or the self-made woman for that matter. You know the archetype I'm talking about.
Oh, absolutely. The hustler,
Yeah.
the ultimate success story, the person who, pulls themselves up by their bootstraps, outsmarts everyone, and just engineers their own destiny by sheer force of will.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we celebrate that. We put those people on magazine covers. But we're looking at a stack of sources today that argue that the self-made man is actually, well, a myth.
Or maybe, if not a myth, a dead end.
A dead end, right. We're unpacking a story that suggests your life doesn't actually begin, really begin, until your ability to make it happen on your own gets completely shattered.
Yeah, we're talking about hitting the wall, that moment where your charm, your money, your cleverness,
Yeah.
it all just stops working.
And the analysis we're finding is that hitting that wall, that moment of total terrifying powerlessness, might be the only way to actually find out who you are.
We are looking at the ancient story of Jacob, or Yaakov.
And before anyone tunes out because they think this is going to be some Sunday school lesson,
Yeah.
just pause. The way these sources look at this, it's treated as a psychological masterclass in what they call ego death.
It really is. It's a case study of a man who spent his life scamming people, getting broken down in this midnight wrestling match, and then having to rebuild his entire identity from the ground up.
And it is not a pretty process.
No, it is not a montage of him reading self-help books. It involves a dislocated hip, a terrifying reunion with a brother he betrayed, and literally burying his past under an oak tree.
So let's lay out the roadmap for this deep dive. Our sources are focusing on three pivotal moments in this guy's life.
Right. The wrestling match at the Jabbok River,
The confrontation with his brother Esau.
and a final return to a place called Bethel.
And the mission here is to really understand the transition from Jacob to Israel. We're trying to figure out why this text insists that you have to lose your physical strength to gain real power.
It's the paradox of the limp.
Okay, let's set the scene. We're calling this the breaking point. Jacob is camped out at the Jabbok River. Now, for some context, Jacob is a twin,
The younger twin.
the younger twin, and his whole life has been about clawing for first place. He tricked his brother Esau out of his birthright. He tricked his blind father into giving him the blessing, and then he ran away.
He's the ultimate trickster. I mean, his name, Jacob, literally means something like heel grabber or supplanter.
He's the guy who trips people to get ahead.
He's the guy in the office who steals your idea and gets the promotion.
Right. But now, the bill has come due. He's on his way home after years away, and you get word that Esau, the brother he scammed, is coming to meet him.
And Esau isn't coming alone.
No, he has 400 men with him.
Which, in the ancient world, is not a welcoming committee. That's a small army. That's a hit squad.
So Jacob is, you can imagine, terrified. And this is where we see his old habits kick in at first. He tries to strategize.
He does what he does best, scheming, trying to control the outcome.
He splits his camp into two groups, thinking if Esau attacks one, the other might get away. He sends all these gifts ahead of him. He's managing the crisis.
But then he does something interesting. He sends his family, his wives, his kids, all his stuff across the river to safety. And he stays behind.
Alone, in the dark.
And this is so crucial. The source emphasizes that this kind of transformation requires isolation. You can't have an ego death while you're distracted by your entourage or your possessions.
You have to be stripped bare.
He had to be alone with his fear. And that is where the wrestling happens. The text says a man wrestled with him until daybreak.
Later, it's implied this is an angel or even, God in some form. But the analysis we have takes a really interesting angle on this. It says he wasn't just wrestling an external opponent.
Right. The source suggests he was wrestling with false gods. Now, in this context, a false god isn't just a statue.
It's his own self-reliance.
Exactly. He was wrestling with that part of himself that said, I can fix this. I can scheme my way out of this like I always do.
It's a battle for control. He's fighting to keep his identity as the self-made man intact.
Imagine struggling against the realization that you are not in charge. I mean, that is a violent struggle. And it lasts all night.
But here's the part that always confuses me. The story says Jacob prevailed. He won. How does a human win a wrestling match against a divine being? That sounds unlikely.
It does sound backward. But the win wasn't that he overpowered the angel and pinned him like a WWE match. The source argues he won because he refused to let go until he got a blessing.
So he won by holding on, by realizing, I cannot survive this without help.
The victory was actually a surrender.
Wow.
The victory was admitting he needed a blessing more than he needed to win the fight. And that is when he gets the new name, Israel.
Which means?
It translates roughly to he struggles with God or God prevails. But the analysis points out something fascinating about what Jacob names the location. He calls the place Peniel.
Peniel. Okay, let's unpack that. What does that mean?
It translates to the face of God.
The face of God.
Oh.
That sounds poetic, but usually in these ancient texts, seeing God's face is a death sentence, isn't it? You're not supposed to survive that.
Right. It's usually terrifying. But the deeper implication here, according to our source, is about orientation. For his whole life, Jacob's been looking at himself, his own wants, his own schemes.
His own face in the mirror.
Yes. Naming the place Peniel means he finally looked away from the mirror and looked at the truth. The source equates God's face with God's truth or the word.
It's a pivot. He stopped looking at his own face, his identity as the trickster, and looked directly at reality. He realized he wasn't the center of the universe.
But he didn't walk away from this encounter with just a new perspective. He walked away with a permanent injury.
The hip socket.
The hip socket. Yeah, the text is very specific. His thigh bone was dislocated.
Now, why the hip? Why not a broken nose or something? Is there symbolism there?
Oh, there is deep symbolism in ancient thought. And specifically in this analysis, the thigh or the hip is the fulcrum of power. It's the center of your physical strength. It's what allows you to stand your ground, to lift, and most importantly, to run.
And Jacob was a runner. That was his whole MO. When things got hard with Esau the first time, he ran. When things got hard with his father-in-law, he ran.
Exactly. When things got hard, Jacob ran. By dislocating the hip, the source argues that God was breaking Jacob's fleshly ability. He was physically dismantling his capacity to rely on his own natural strength.
So he literally couldn't run away from his problems anymore.
He was grounded. He was rendered powerless in the physical sense, so he would be forced to rely on spiritual strength. He had to lean. He physically could not stand without support.
There's this cinematic image in the text that I love. It says the sun rose as he passed Peniel. So picture this. The terrifying night is over, the sun is coming up, but he's limping.
That juxtaposition is everything. The source points out that the sunrise symbolizes the return of God's favor. The darkness is over.
But the limp remains.
It seems like a cruel trophy, doesn't it? Congratulations on your spiritual breakthrough. Here's a lifelong disability.
I mean, that's how we would see it. We value self-sufficiency above everything else.
But the source frames it as a check. It's a constant physical reminder. Every step he takes for the rest of his life, he feels that hitch in his step.
And that hitch reminds him, you are not the one keeping yourself upright.
So the limp is actually the proof of the transformation. It's the badge of honor.
Right. A true Israelite, according to this deep dive, is someone who has stopped relying on their own hip bone, their own cleverness, their own hustle, and has shifted their weight onto the word from God's mouth.
It's a complete rethinking of weakness. We usually think weakness is bad. We try to hide it.
But here, weakness is the prerequisite for the blessing.
Because if you aren't weak, you don't think you need grace. You think you've got it covered.
Which leads us perfectly into the next part, the mirror effect. Because now limping Jacob has to go do the thing he was so terrified of.
He has to meet Esau.
And remember, the stakes haven't changed. Esau still has the 400 men. He's still outnumbered.
But the dynamic has changed because Jacob has changed.
Old Jacob, the guy with the good hip, would have had a strategy, a plan B, C, and D.
But new Jacob, Israel, he just walks forward. He bows 7 times. He's completely vulnerable. And when he finally stands face to face with Esau, he says something that, well, honestly, sounds incredibly suspicious.
I have the quote right here. He looks at his brother, the guy who wants to kill him, and says, "Seeing your face is like seeing the face of God."
Now, be honest. If someone scammed you, disappeared for 20 years, and came back and said, wow, seeing you is like seeing God, what's your reaction?
I'm rolling my eyes. I think he's trying to butter me up so I don't punch him. It sounds like pure manipulation.
It sounds like the old Jacob, like flattery. But our source insists that is not what's happening. It argues this was genuine radical humility born from that wrestling match.
Okay, connect those dots for me. How does getting your hip dislocated make you see God in your enemy?
Well, think about Peniel. Jacob saw the face of God, the truth, and he realized he was flawed, weak, and totally dependent on grace. He saw his own brokenness.
So he saw he wasn't better than Esau.
Not at all. And once you really see that, once you realize you aren't the hero of your own story, you're just a guy who needs mercy, you stop judging everyone else. The source says that because Jacob had experienced grace, he could now see the image of God, even in Esau.
So he wasn't looking at Esau the threat anymore. He was looking at Esau the human soul.
Exactly. And that internal shift changed the external reality. This is the mirror effect. Jacob moved from a mindset of taking, I want your birthright, I want the blessing, to sharing. He insists on giving Esau these massive gifts.
Right, he's giving back what he effectively stole.
And what happens to Esau, the guy with 400 men ready for war?
His heart melts. He runs to Jacob, hugs him, and they weep.
The source argues that humility is disarming. When you stop coming at people with your strength and your rights, and you come at them with vulnerability, it breaks the cycle of hostility. It's hard to attack someone who is already limping and bowing down.
It's interesting because the source material makes a pretty strong theological connection here, right, to the New Testament.
It does. It brings up the new commandment, the idea that you have to deny yourself, die to your ego to truly love your neighbor. The source quotes the saying, "Those who seek to save their life will lose it, but those who lose it will find it."
So Jacob lost his life, his identity as the strong, clever trickster at the river. And because of that, he was able to find a real relationship with his brother.
It validates that whole paradox. And there's a social implication here that I think is really powerful. The source says when you receive grace, you stop being a critic.
A critic.
Yeah. I mean, think about how easy it is to criticize others, to look at someone and think, I would never do that, or they are so wrong. That judgment comes from a place of thinking your hip is strong.
But if you know you're limping.
If you know you're limping, you feel compassion, you feel pity. You realize everyone else is limping too, even if they're hiding it better. Instead of seeing an obstacle, you see a struggler, just like you.
And that's what the source claims is the definition of loving your neighbor.
It's a love that comes from shared brokenness, not moral superiority.
So we had the limp, which was the humbling.
Mm-hmm.
We have the face, which was the reconciliation. But there's one more step in this transformation.
The return to Bethel.
Right. Burying the baggage. God tells Jacob to go back to Bethel, which means the house of God. This is where his relationship with God started years ago when he was first running away.
It's a full circle moment. He's going back to the start, but he can't just waltz in. There's a condition. He has to clean house.
And the source notes that Jacob ordered his entire household to gather up all the foreign gods and idols they were carrying.
And we need to understand what this means. These were literal statues, charms for good luck, fertility idols, things you kept just in case the main god didn't come through.
They were backup plans, hedging their bets.
Exactly. Tangible backup plans. I trust God, but I'll keep this little idol in my pocket just in case. And Jacob says, get rid of them.
And he doesn't just throw them away. The text is so specific. He buries them under an oak tree near Shechem.
There's something so final about that. Burying them. It's a funeral. He's putting the old ways, the old reliances into the ground for good.
It feels like the final step of that ego death we talked about. First his body was broken, then his pride was broken, and now he's physically removing the safety nets.
You can't go to the house of God dragging the baggage of false idols with you. It implies a singular focus. He is burning the bridges to his old life.
And only after that does he get the confirmation. God appears again at Bethel.
And this is the seal. God confirms the name change. Your name shall not be called Jacob anymore, but Israel shall be your name. It's like the transformation is now stamped, made permanent.
And with that name comes this ultimate promise. The source outlines the blessing. Be fruitful, multiply. A nation will come from you. Kings will come from you.
And the land given to Abraham and Isaac is confirmed as his.
Now, our source takes this beyond just, land and kings in the ancient Near East. It connects this to the big picture. Why does this matter for us?
The analysis interprets this promise as extending to the descendants of faith. Because Jacob wrestled, because he accepted the limp and buried his idols, he unlocked a legacy that goes on forever. He became a vessel.
So the argument is, you have to be broken to be used.
In this context, yes. If Jacob had stayed Jacob, the slick, self-reliant con artist, his story would have just ended with him being a rich guy. But because he became Israel, the one who struggles with God and surrenders, he became the father of a nation.
It really is a complete arc. It starts with the crisis in the dark.
Then the painful surgery of the ego at the river.
Then the proof of the change, that hug with his brother.
And finally, the settlement burying the past and stepping into the future promise.
So bringing this back to that self-made man idea, this story seems to be saying, fire the self-made man. He's not going to get you where you need to go.
I think the biggest takeaway is rethinking our relationship with our own limitations. We spend so much energy trying to be strong, trying to keep our hip socket intact so we can run and fight.
We hate the idea of limping. We hide our limps. We pretend everything is fine.
We filter them out on social media. But this story and the analysis we've read suggest that the limp is actually the trophy.
That is a hard sell for modern ears. The limp is the trophy.
It is a hard sell, but think about it. The limp proves you've met something bigger than yourself. It proves you've stopped running. I mean, limping isn't a bad thing if it means you aren't running full speed in the wrong direction anymore.
That's a powerful image. It's better to walk slowly in the right direction than to sprint off a cliff.
Precisely. True victory becoming Israel comes from abandoning self-reliance. It's about admitting, I can't do this on my own. It's about relying on truth instead of tricks.
And we see the proof of that victory in how we treat people. That's the litmus test, isn't it?
It is. If you're still fighting everyone, still judging everyone, you might still be wrestling in the dark. You're still Jacob. You haven't had the sunrise yet.
But if you can look at your enemy, your annoying boss, your estranged family member, and see the face of God.
If you can offer grace because you know how much grace you've needed, that's when you know the transformation is real. That's the mark of Israel.
And finally, that promise at Bethel tells us that this whole process, as painful as it is, has a purpose. It's clearing the ground for a blessing that is bigger than we can imagine.
It's the promise of a future. But you have to bury the idols first. You can't drag your old coping mechanisms into your new destiny.
This has been quite a journey, from the riverbank to the sunrise. I think we need to leave our listeners with something to chew on.
I agree. If we take the source material seriously, it asks us to examine our own wrestling matches.
So here's the question we want to leave you with. What is the false god or that personal strength you're wrestling with right now? What is the thing you are relying on? Your wit, your money, your anger that actually needs to be dislocated so you can finally move forward?
What needs to break so that you can become who you're supposed to be?
Deep stuff. But that's why we're here. As always, thank you for diving deep with us. Stay curious, keep asking the hard questions.